Hey y'all, we're back for another very special episode of Smart Financial Jewels with a very special guest of mine. We've had him actually on the show, I think, during our first or second season, and I've worked with this king in the creative space. He's definitely a filmmaker, director, entrepreneur, I believe even an author, or if not, I'm speaking into his future that he's definitely going to be an author in the future. He's doing great things in the film and also creative space and industry. And he's going to come on to talk to us about one of his biggest creative projects known to this day, and what he and also his co-director and filmmaker are working on. And so without further ado, y'all know we also interview entrepreneurs and content creators or creatives for the Smart Financial Jewels show. And so let's get ready to have you all meet my very special guest, Mr. Vega Montanez. Vega, how you doing, King?
What's up, brother? How you?
Doing well, man. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and
My
talk
busy
to us.
schedule. You the
Uh,
one traveling around the world.
Yeah, man, we're trying to do a little something, man, to show people that they can work in their destination of choice. And so we just wanted to thank you, King, for taking time out of your week to share some financial jewels and some content creator jewels of wisdom with our audience. But for those who may not know you, can you introduce yourself formally to our audience, to tell people a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, and even where you're tuning in with us today for your interview.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. It's a massive support that any interview or any type of press engagement is for the film. So super excited to be here. This is gonna be like you said. This is my biggest film to date, biggest creative project to date, starting in music and transitioning into film early 2019, and now here we are with a couple of films under my belt, and it's been quite an exciting, crazy journey, crazy process that I love to talk about. So that's a little bit about me. I was born in New York, raised primarily in Providence, Rhode Island. Back here talking to you from the Bronx, and just was hosting the Dominican Film Festival red carpet yesterday here in New York. So, it's been a crazy week, but an exciting week.
I love that, man. I love that, and shout out to all the West Indians too. I forgot to mention,
Yes, indeed.
definitely Vega is West Indian Caribbean, and so we always gotta give big up and love to any of our West Indian or Caribbean content creatives or entrepreneurs. And so definitely shout out to all the West Indians. But yeah, let's start from I know your basis, Vega. I know you worked on, as you said, a ton of creative projects. Like, talk to those who are dreamers, those who are content creators, those who are maybe self-starters that want to create this type of film, this type of project. Like, how much follow through, how much discipline, how much being able to be patient goes into making this type of project a reality. Like, talk to the people about your process of actually seeing it through and making it a reality. Like, how did you do it, and also what would you recommend someone do to make their dream of wanting to do this particular project a reality?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my mom instilled this wisdom and principle on me, so I'm more so passing her wisdom forward to everybody else. But ultimately, in the most simple way, we're all people, right? We're all capable of doing the same thing. So if you see something that someone else is doing and you want to do that, all it really is going to take is commitment and effort. And that's the most important part is the commitment and effort, because that's what's going to drive you to keep pivoting every time you feel like you failed or every time you feel like you're stalled. It lets you keep maneuvering around whatever barriers are making themselves possible, or making themselves present rather, uh, as you try to continue making these projects come to life, especially and I love that we're on this. Now that I think about it, I love that we're on this podcast specifically talking about this, because it's a huge aspect of what I love talking about in the creative space. It is the business side of it, where not enough of us as creatives take the time or spend the time in the business element of our creative work. And I understand, I respect the aspect of, creativity is art, and art is beautiful, and art should be cherished and all this stuff. But ultimately, art takes resources to make. So you have to put yourself in a position where you can continue generating the resources you need to create the art you want to create, whether you want to maximize its commercial profitability, or if you just want to be able to stay self-sustained. Ultimately, that resource of money, as creatives, we have to build a different relationship with it. Right now, we have such a toxic relationship with the idea of money. And I actually got to give credit to my friend Manny Ventura, who tried to instill that into me a few years back. And it just took a little while to develop, but like I fully align with that mentality now, where it's not so much about getting rich, it's just about staying alive to make what you want to make. I'm not sure if that fully answered the question.
Oh no, 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 you're right. You're right on point with that too. No, you're right on point with that too. And even like you were saying, I know you mentioned Manny sewing into you that jewel early on. Like, did you have any people that were pushing you throughout the process, or do you have any mentors or any guides that you usually rely on to help you stay accountable to what you said you're going to do? Like, talk about the process of your support system or your support team when it comes to creative projects.
So it's interesting that you asked that. I'm gonna address like the back end of that first, which was about the accountability piece, right? So I don't necessarily have anyone that holds me accountable, or any specific people or person I go to. But one thing that I found is that before, I used to have a really bad problem with finishing things. Like I would get really excited about starting, get to a certain point, and then just be like, all right, somebody just take it from here, because like all of the work is pretty much done. Just wrap it up. And then obviously those never really happen. But over the last 5 or 6 years or so, my commitment to other people's success kind of shifted a bit, in a way where now when I work in group projects, which is one of the big things that film allows me to do, it gives me this extra resurgence of energy to finish what we did, so I don't let the people around me down. So that accountability is there, but it's less of a dialogue and more of a it just exists, right? Like I can't look these people who work so hard alongside me to get this thing done, and be the person that's not letting it finish, or not be a part of whatever it needs to happen to get it finished. On the mentor side, there's a ton of people that I met along the way, no matter where our relationships stand right now, that influence you whether they intend to or not. And I think that's a really key element, especially in my opinion, with the way social media has driven people's lack of the ability to socialize in person. You have to take these moments and these jewels from every conversation you have. Every person you engage with is going to bring something to the table, and if you spend enough time analyzing, and of course you don't want to overanalyze, but if you spend enough time analyzing, there's every interaction is going to have an impact on how you move forward with whatever it is you're doing, whether it's something as complex as making a film, or uh, running for government, obviously comes to mind immediately, or running for, or campaigning yourself for that promotion, or starting your business, right? You're going to need that extra experience that you get from people when you don't specifically ask about experience. So I think dual fold, I've had people who have stepped in, like Steve Cronin, incredible mentor of mine, who stepped in while I was in high school, and was able to kind of help mold the energy I had in high school to help me finish, get through it. There's just so many people that come to mind. Um, Damn, that's crazy. There's so many people that I've had the privilege of working with. George Ortiz, Victorious Ramos, J. Justice Smith, just a lot of people that again just in conversation or through direct mentorship, they've been a part of the way that I navigate and succeed, for lack of a better term, with the work I do.
Yeah, no, I love that. We always like to give credence and pay just due flowers and respect to those individuals that have helped us along the way, especially to make a creative project or even any project come to fruition as an entrepreneur, a creative, or a filmmaker. And so, like, even when, just a pivot when it comes to funding, because we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and creatives about like whether they're self-funding, whether they're group funding, or whether they're taking different grants to even fund their projects. Like, talk to people about even for this project or any of your big projects that you had to fund. Like, what are the ways that you fund it, and give people like some steps about how to even fund their own project, like what really goes on behind the scenes after people are able to see the final product. Like, do you go over your books to see how much you were able to profit or how much you were in a loss with? Like, talk to people about your financial process.
Again, a beautiful question, especially for the way that I'm looking at the industry and the hope of the way the industry will be changing over the next couple of years. Um, so, speaking specifically of the most recent project, right? Because it's a great example of how efficiently this could work. So, we shot this film over the course of 9 days. Total budget of the film was 60,000. 15 of that is primarily marketing, so 45,000 or so. With of course, like, this is constrained budgets, right? And part of that is in how we raise the funds. So I'll get to that in a second. But ultimately, the big conversation, and this is the part that the movie people want to tune into, and the people who are interested in secure financial investments, right? Um, Investing in independent film works a couple of ways, right? So you have the traditional route, which is just the most basic version, right? We go to somebody, we say, here's a script, here's an idea, give us money. They have tons of money, they invest in it. And then we have the financial projections that talk about, compared to other films like this, what is the likelihood that this film is going to be profitable based on how much money we spend to make it, how much money we spend on cast, how much money we spend in marketing, and all of these numbers get budgeted out. So for anybody who's looked at a film sheet and has produced a film before, you understand what I'm talking about. For anyone who's interested, I definitely recommend going to a couple of different places just to get kind of a general basis. Stage 32 is a great place. They have some good info there. ePartners has an actual production course that's pretty good. Um, so those are just like some quick little reference points for if anything gets too complicated. Pause, look at it real quick, come right back. But on the financial side, right? As a film investor, there's a couple of great things that happen when you invest in independent film, especially when you work in micro budget films. Um, and not micro budget films that are working with illegal processes for crew, but micro budget films that are doing everything above the line. Uh, the investment benefits for that are the lifelong value of the thing that gets created, right? So, one of the biggest fears in film investing is that the film doesn't actually get finished. uh, as long as you can work with a team that's going to secure the process to get as much of a guarantee as you can. And like I said, we'll get into some of that in a little bit, because we've come up with a very strong system that works. Uh, but once you have that secured system, ultimately the film releases in multiple phases, right? So you have multiple stages of income that you measure against the cost of the film. So the first stage is the initial release. Initial release typically is going to be theatrical or your rental purchase options, right? Or what we call transactional video on demand. And that's going to be somebody going on Amazon Prime, like where you can find The Burden of Nine Lives right now, and you either buy the film or you rent the film. That purchase price is distributed based on the platform that the film is on. Then we get our revenue in. Revenue continues coming in, measuring that against cost, right? After that initial phase, which usually lasts about 4 weeks, you go into your next phase, right? Now, if you did a theatrical phase, the next phase is transactional, right? So you go from being in the movie theater to being in people's houses, rent and purchase. If you were already in that phase, you then go into streaming video on demand or ad video on demand. If you go to streaming video on demand, most of the time you get a pretty decent licensing deal where they're paying you based on the performance of the film already, and the idea that the people who didn't rent it are gonna not cancel their Netflix subscription because now Netflix has this movie that they wanted to watch. So you negotiate those rates, or you end up in a space where they pay you per stream, which typically goes more alongside the lines of ad video on demand, which is exactly what it is, right? It's like the Tubis, the Rokus. You watch a movie, an ad might play in the middle. Based on how many of those ads play, based on how many times people watch movies, that's how you get paid out. So the reason that's important is because the lifetime of the product is near endless, and the viability of the product continues to grow based on the people involved, right? So if in the Burn the Nine Lives, we have a couple of amazing actors, right? Rico Hundo, Steve Stain Fernandez, Louis Barrio, Ashley Rose Nicholas. So as these actors continue growing, this now becomes legacy film, and you have another opportunity to generate revenue, whether it be a re-release, whether it be relicensing, all of these different things. So those are some of the things that make it really valuable to get into film. Now, the part that becomes a bit of a contentious point is the production of the film, right? How do we spend the money that we bring together to make this movie? So if we were lucky enough to get an investor, cool, we have this money available. We know we got to stick to our budget. We can work with that. If we get the budget through other sources, that can impact the way films are made a little bit. And that's where how we specifically do things. When I say we, it's because I'm very proud of how my whole team comes together to make things happen. But ultimately, when we go into making a film, part of the process is breaking down the script initially to look for partners, right? Because product partners can help not only increase the value of the film for potential investors, but also act as a marketing source for these products, which they will pay for, right? So in the Burden and Lions Labs, we have a couple of product partners, L's, Ground Up Coffee Club, We Want Picks, Bisco Logia, right? And these are all products and brands that are available globally that found value in working with us based on how we explain the script to them, based on how we explain their presentation in the story, to include product, which helps us reduce cost on props, and also finance, which is actual funds we can use to make the movie. The making of the movie part is where things get really contentious on the idea of how are you supposed to pay for crew, cast, and all of that. So I'm very big on the idea that we have the coolest job in the world, right? So as long as everyone is comfortable with what they're being paid and we're paying people to scale or at scale or within scale range, then we're in good shape to make a movie. The rest of the industry standards, those are variable based on the size of the project you have, right? Like, of course, we don't want to see directors with a $20 million budget penny pinching and making everybody work at the lowest possible they can get it for scale. But we shouldn't hold independent filmmakers to the same scale standards that we hold Hollywood filmmakers. And using that mentality, we can create independent films at significantly lower cost than studio films, but still generate the same type of revenue and income by replicating marketing strategies that they use for and within the films to sell them.
Yeah, no, that's a ton of jewels that you're dropping on even myself and a lot of us who are looking to fund a creative project or independent project, excuse me, like yourself. And when it comes to your team of people that you even have to pay, a lot of people don't think about that, whether they're volunteers or whether they're actually having to be paid for their services. Like, talk to our audience about are there ways to allow people to know that there will be future payoffs, and whether there be royalties and things of that nature, or sponsorships, or typically when you're working in the director's seat or the filmmaker's seat, um, do you have to pay people up front, like give people different scenarios that you've seen, especially for your current project or previous projects, in whether you're able to have people work as volunteers or whether they have to all get paid up front?
That's a great question, and I'm very interested as to see where the audience lands with my answer. But my answer is very strong, very firm, right? Pay every single person that works with you what you can afford, right? So that's a very important factor, right? Because everybody's always shouting about pay everybody, but when we go to pay everybody, some people are saying we're not paying them enough, right? And that's a valid thing. You are allowed to decide your value the same way other people are, right? But your value doesn't change what I have available. Okay, so now if you start trying to bend over backwards, trying to figure out how you're going to pay this person or how you're going to increase this, like you have to start with your budget. I think a lot of people who have not had the opportunities to work with the business side of creativity, right? They just have the flexibility and freedom to just create art. When you get into the business side, you have to start with your budget, right? Set your budget and then approach people based on your budget. I see a lot of times, even myself, when I'm available for freelance work, people will reach out and they'll ask me what my rate is, or what my scale range is and things like that. And it's not an effective strategy, right? Because in this industry, rates absolutely do change based on clientele. My rate for Universal is not going to be exactly the same as my rate for, John Smith making a movie from down the street, right? Like there has to be some flexibility there, or else we do get stuck in a space where the only time movies come out is from the studios because the studios are the only ones who can afford to pay studio rates. So we need to see a little bit of flexibility there. And like I said, that flexibility comes from the approach. So you as the producer, you as the director, or whoever is making the decision to approach people to join the crew, have to already have your number in mind, your maximum number in mind. Um, so once you go to people, you can say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is the rate I have available. Now you can have a very clear dialogue and figure out if this is going to work or if it's not going to work, as opposed to asking people to tell you what their rate is and then being stuck in that position where now you can't really have much of a dialogue. uh, But if you leave that space up to the person when you contact them and say, hey, this is what's available, now they can decide if they want to pursue that dialogue, especially in a way that's going to make sense for your project.
No, man, I definitely need to hear that, just like a lot of other content creators need to hear about the pay now, pay later process, because as you know, with the writer strike and all of that that just happened not too long ago, a lot of people were feeling invalid or invalidated based off of being paid their worth, as you just said. And I'm glad you had mentioned that, like pay what you can versus trying to hold people off or push people off of you, like you Suge Knight, and they got to come see you after the album
Yeah.
drops and goes double or triple platinum before they get paid. So yeah, I
And
appreciate you being
I'm big
transparent.
on having a pay standard, but also having like I said, that flexibility. Um,
Yeah.
Also very big on, oh man, I just drew a blank because two thoughts came to mind. Never mind.
Oh no, you good. You good. That was just gonna segue into, I know we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners like yourself. When it comes to saving and investing, a lot of times there are certain times where you have to take big risk, and so you may have to dip into your savings, or you may have to dibble and dabble into your investments before the payoff or the return is able to manifest itself. Like, talk to people just about you as a filmmaker and as a creative. Do you still invest throughout your creative projects? Do you save throughout your creative projects so you can put towards another creative project? Like, talk to people about your day to day, month to month, even year to year, like spending as an entrepreneur, business owner, and even a producer and filmmaker. Like, how do you save and invest your funds that you actually make on the projects, or even that you make throughout the year to go into those creative projects?
Yeah, definitely. I remembered what I was going to say, so I'll say it real quick. Uh, I
Hmm.
believe I believe there should be a standard rate system, but I also believe everything should be negotiable, right? So, like, just have conversations with people based on how excited you are to be a part of the project and kind of just go from there. Because there are spaces where you could get back end. You could say, yeah, you don't have to pay me up front. You could pay me 10 days later, 30 days later, whatever that might be. Um, on the other side of it, so the first thing I'll say on that is risk measuring, right? Like, it's really hard to it it's almost impossible to accurately assess the value of a risk you're about to take, right? You can only know so much. So if you're saying, if I spend this money from my savings and I take this chance and go down to Atlanta, right? Like, this could be the make or break moment, right? I like to operate with a little bit more measurable information. So part of that I think is the advice piece that's really, really easy for people to follow, even if you ignore everything else. Set a risk limit for the year, right? Like, how many risks are you willing to take for the year, right? Start thinking about what that looks like. And you'll start realizing before you measured it, you were turning every little opportunity presented to you into the let's risk it all moment. And you don't have to do that. Not every moment is the risk it all moment. Some of them you can pass on. Some of them you have to pass on because they just don't work for you in the moment. And then every now and then you have a moment that you should risk it, and hopefully it works out. And if it doesn't, at least you know you got two left, you got one left, or whatever your number ends up being. But definitely do everything in a measured way. I think that's the ultimate message overall for creatives or anybody driven to turn their or to try to have a career in art, or in entertainment. It's be measurable. You have information that you can look at and say, am I doing better today than I was yesterday? If not, why? If so, why?
Yeah, yeah, and that even goes like with the savings piece. Do you save? Like, how's your process in saving for, as they say, a rainy day? Because we do talk like savings. Do you save from your creative projects or even from your personal work that you work on throughout the year, or how do you process your savings throughout the year, or even your savings accounts that you may have?
I'm a little bit more I'm a little bit more risky when it comes to finances. So most of so I usually will set aside like 30% of whatever I get paid to do a project. Of that 30%, probably 80 or 90% will go into like a Bitcoin, just because it's something that's growing at a rate way faster than a savings account. I can keep an eye on it, and if it starts to fall out of what I put in there, then we can pull out pretty quickly. Everything is very instantaneous in that space, so it just feels a little bit safer for savings. And I think that's the way that I've been going lately. I wouldn't necessarily say this is an advice moment. It's just a thought process moment. I do have a savings account, but I think like I said, at the by the time we get to what's in savings, if I'm putting 2 to 5% of what I make per project in a savings account, even that I would say is a lot. Most of what I have saved is in portfolio stuff that grows, or is projected to grow in ways that just make a little bit more sense than a savings account. But to each their own, because again, it's a risky space that you're playing in when you're playing with stocks or cryptocurrency or anything where the goal is to make more money from just money. So, just always keep that in mind when you're doing it. I used to tell people when they would ask me on a very basic level about stocks, right? Go home, look around your house, figure out the things that you buy the most of, and find those three or four companies, start there, right? At the very least, you know that you've invested in something that is decent enough to call safe because you yourself buy it on a consistent basis. Um, that's kind of a very, very surface level investment idea.
Yeah, no, that's excellent to hear. A lot of entrepreneurs and especially people on social media, as I know you've seen on Instagram, the YouTubes, and even on Facebook or Meta, they may not talk about their individual finances outside of the creative projects or even the business finances. And so we know one hand washes the other. And as you said, being a risk taker has its rewards. And even you could take major losses when it
Hmm.
comes to high risk. And so just before we let you go, like even talk about that risk versus like loss factor. Like, have you taken any major losses where not that you lost your pants or your home or your car or vehicle being repoed, but like even through the creative process, have you taken any major losses versus the risk factor of reward? Like, because we want to be realistic with some of our audience members. Talk about any of the losses that you may have taken and that you still had to persevere through in order to keep going and to get to this point of having your biggest project or film to this day being made.
So I've heard you ask other people this question. I've seen this question asked on other shows and stuff, and I've always looked at it and been like, that's a funny question, right? And I feel like it's a funny question because the most honest truth is everything you didn't get to see is a major loss. Like money was invested in every single idea that we try, whether it's a big amount or a small amount. But in the moment that you make that investment, it's never a little bit of what you have. You know what I mean? When you make, whenever you dive into a creative process or you dive into a project or you dive into something, you're not diving in and saying, all right, I'm going to take 5% of the money I have available and we're going to give it our best. You usually dive into it with like 90% of what you have available, 70% if you're pretty smart, and 50% of you're a genius. But even by that point, if it doesn't work, you just lost 50% of what you had available to you in the moment you started the project. So I can't, I can never really point at anything that was super specifically a major loss because I've become very, very good at pivoting. I'm very flexible with how the ideas work as far as what it takes to get them to the finale. As long as the finale doesn't shift severely, um, so that's my answer to that. In my opinion, my most truthful answer is if you can imagine every script I've written that you haven't seen, or every song I wrote that you haven't seen, or every stage that there was a concert on that I wasn't performing, like those are all part of those major losses because there was time, energy, finances put into trying to get those.
Yeah, nah, that's being real. Like as you mentioned, those small amounts add up to the
They
large
add up.
quantities, especially when you are having to live by the budget. So we definitely appreciate you being candid and also being transparent even about that process. But tell people as we get ready to go into our last segment with final jewels, give people where they can support your project that you are currently on the press run for, and also tell people even a little bit about, do you have anything in the wins for next year or that may be coming up down the pipeline? Let people know how they can support you and also where they can see you going in the near future if they want to follow you and also see what projects you have coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we are talking about The Burden of Nine Lives, action thriller with a hint of romance that I think, based on the reviews we've gotten so far, they're even better than I imagined they were going to be. So we've been super excited this whole time about it. So you can definitely check that out right on Amazon Prime. Um, Alongside that, a film that I wrote was directed by a good friend of mine, Cosmo Lasco, called Nico. It is also available on Amazon Prime, also getting really great reviews. So that's a action noir thriller. So they're both they're both doing amazing right now. I think you guys will love them both. And definitely check them out. If you want to stay in touch with me, you can follow me at What Up Vega on all social media. You can email me, whatupvega at gmail. Whatupvega.com is my website. Head to theburden9lives.com to learn all about this new exciting movie we've got. And for anybody who's interested in dabbling their feet in film investment, send a message over my way and let's see what we can learn some more about.
I love that. I love that, King. And just before we let you go, similar to all of our podcasts that we host under the Smart Jewels Network, we always like to have the guest leave a final word or a final jewel of wisdom. What would you tell Vega before we have you go towards that content creator, that future filmmaker, or even that current filmmaker that wants to get to the level that you are at right now? What type of advice or motivation would you give them in order to keep going and to not give up on their dreams, to not let other people talk them out of their dreams of getting to this type of project completion rate and stage? Like, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think since I bragged since I bragged a little bit about my ability to pivot and not looking at things so much as a failure and more as a we have to switch lanes on it. The final jewel I got to give people is a very simple phrase that we've kind of adopted as a team. We don't try, we do. And that came from the idea that trying does leave room for failure, right? If we say we're going to do something, it's not about how well we do the thing, it's about whether we do the thing or not. And as long as we hold ourselves, like you said, to that accountability or to certain standards, certain measures, we're going to do the thing well. The key is that we do it because getting it done, even if it's not done perfectly, is better than not doing it at all. Especially when we talk about like I addressed earlier, right? Like the idea of what's the biggest loss you've taken. The biggest loss we've taken is the culmination of things that didn't work. So the best way to minimize that loss is to make sure the thing is done or it works or whatever your finish term or goal is, so that you maximize as much of that expense as possible.
Yeah, no, that's real. That's real, y'all. Definitely go back and watch this episode, listen to this episode for those who are on the podcast, and definitely share this content with someone you know that is an entrepreneur or an aspiring filmmaker or a current filmmaker or content creator. Definitely enjoyed today's episode with my very special guest, Vega Montanez. And we appreciate you coming on for the Smart Financial Jewels podcast today, Vega. And you have a great week, King. I know we'll be in touch, and we'll definitely be supporting your project in any way that we can, man.
All right, my brother. Thank you so much for having me, and we'll be in touch. I've got some more movies coming soon.
Absolutely. Have a great week, man, or a great weekend.
You as well.
Okay, peace. All right, y'all. Just to do some jewels for thought for today's episode that I had with Vega. As you heard him say, you got to be a risk taker, y'all. You can't be scared. You can't be afraid to go after your dreams and also go after your vision. There's going to be a lot of people that will fall off along the way, as you already should know. Everyone that starts with you doesn't always end with you. Everyone that wants to ride the plane with you can't fit in the same row as you. And so you need to be able to really value the people that do stick around and stay with you. Value your team, as you heard Vegas say. Don't think it's all about you. Don't be prideful. Don't be arrogant. Be confident, but definitely look at the people that you have on your team as valuable pieces and parts to your vision becoming a reality. Don't devalue or undervalue the people that have supported you. I always believe in giving flowers before people pass, and also before it's too late. And so love on those individuals that have stuck around with you. Um, Definitely give thanks, and even potentially give monetary thanks to those people as you achieve certain levels of success that literally were your backbone or your word of inspiration, or even your support system, because we all need support as entrepreneurs. We all need a team as those who are visionaries. And so when you think about your finances, also think about who has contributed to making those finances increase. And so that would be my final jewel thought. Definitely value the team and the support, the support around you. And we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Today's episode has been sponsored by StreamYard. This is the platform that we use for all of our episodes that we stream online for our online audience. And so if you've enjoyed today's episode, you can click the link that's in the comment section to get $10 off a discounted price on today's packages that you can acquire as a StreamYard user or a subscriber. And we also have all of our content that is being streamed directly to the Smart Jewelz network, where we've taken all of our shows and streamlined them to one source via our YouTube channel, and that we will continue to upload information that we have going on in the next few years, and also the next few months to come. So you can stay connected with us on IG at Smart Jewelz Enterprises, or myself, King Jewelz Speaks, on IG, or you can go to smartjewelzenterprises.org to stay in touch with us, or to get started on your podcast today. So thank you all for rocking with us and tuning in today for our very special episode of Smart Financial Jewels. King Jewelz signing off. Until our next time, make sure you take care of your finances and take care of your financial wellness, because a lot of us are sick out here, and we need to have a financial checkup to be able to have a sturdy house that can outlast the test of time. I'm King Jewelz signing off for Smart Travel Jewels. We'll see y'all next episode. Peace.